from what I learned is that fruits are not good at all, even the berries. So is there any fruit that is considered safe to consume?
Once again, let me repeat what I said. That when a person is really healthy and capable and mature enough to say, I'll only eat ripe organic fruit, less than 15% of your diet by weight can be fruit. Once you go above 15% by weight, that means for every 10 pounds you don't have to, I don't, you can eat 1.5 pounds of fruit. That's always needing to be ripe, always needing to be organic. You should be fine. You get to 18%, it starts to spill in. When a person is facing a formidable disease, they should not eat fruit, they should not eat any sugars of any type, and by the way, avoid cooked carbohydrates, not only because of the sugar, but because of the acrylamides and many other factors that are in cooked foods.
So if a person is healthy, I know you mentioned earlier their starches can convert into sugar in like 30 minutes.
Well, you look at the Indian population as an example. Why the Indian population, who pretty much eats a much better diet than the Western population, are all overweight, is they're eating nothing but things that break down to sugars.
So, in other words, like carrots and beets, are they okay to consume?
They're okay if you want to take fructose and feed disease. So
Okay.
fructose is fructose. So high fructose corn syrup that's in soda, high fructose corn syrup that's in carrots, high fructose corn syrup that's in cherries are all the same thing.
Okay.
It's a particular chemistry. So the same applies. Now if you said, I'm healthy and I'm taking a few baby carrots 3 times a week in my salad, fine. But you're saying I'm going to drink a liter of carrot juice, even if you're healthy, it's a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you comment on why Hippocrates doesn't have tomatoes and cashew nuts? And what do you think about consuming coconut oil?
Well, we'll start with coconut oil, then go to cashew, and then tomatoes. So coconut oil has a whole lot of support at this point, and what science has shown us, and I completely concur with, there's a mid-range triglyceride that's in coconut oil that does help the brain. But to get enough for one person for one day, you'd have to take shockingly high amounts of coconut oil, which would completely reduce oxygen loads in your bloodstream. So I know that raw fooders love coconut because it's a great dessert, and you put agave syrup with it, etc., but it's not really a healthy food. It's one that if you said to me, I'm healthy, I don't have a gallbladder problem, and don't have a liver problem, and I'm going to take 4 tablespoons a week, that's not a problem. If you're an athlete and on a bicycle going up mountains, you may be able to take 8. But for the average person, you don't want more than that. If you are fighting a disorder that you have an oxygen problem to begin with, I'd avoid it like the plague. At this point, there's no company that I'm aware of, and I hope somebody can find one for me, that extract without heating and cooking the oil, because then it becomes a carcinogen. The coconut mid-range triglyceride, because if somebody could do that and preserve it, I think it would be a great supplement for them to make for people with dementia. Now, number 2, cashews are not raw in the overwhelming majority of cases. Again, there's no rule anywhere on the planet Earth that I've discovered, and I've looked, where the word raw has to be raw. So a lot that you're buying raw is not raw. And cashews are one of them. It's in a very hard shell. It's like a mahogany wood shell. It's very difficult to open up. So what they do to open them up is they heat them. Now, since they don't roast them afterward, after they're open, they can get away with saying it's raw, because it's not post-roasted. And so any heated oil and fat becomes a carcinogen. Now, we've known that solidly for over 60 years in legitimate mainstream science. Tomatoes happen to be a fruit that are originating from the jungles of Brazil and South America. The Aztecs and Mayans used them as ornaments on the side of their temples, and it wasn't until the, quote, nicely sounding conquistadors, which were savages, came over and slaughtered these poor indigenous people, and they brought back to Europe the tomato that was used as an ornament. When famines came, then people started to eat it, and it became very popular. When they discovered you can grow tomatoes at high in the mountains and in the desert, it became a popular food. And we have found in science tomatoes are really good for prostate and heart, and I actually believe it's for the brain and circulation. But the problem is it has a little bit of sugar in it. So when people are having a conquest of a disease, we say to avoid it. It should never go on salad because it's a fruit that should not go with the green, but it can be eaten with fruits. and in fact, always has to be ripe. I had a friend that decided not to be educated, he opened up auto body stores and became very successful. And he showed me in a book he had, he said, he's a very funny guy out of the Philadelphia area. He said, you know, when we're trying to clean the paint off the car where the car door opens and you can't get to the crack, we put tomato sauce on that. And I said, did you make that up? He said, no, look at it. It's in the book. So they actually showed you in the auto body book that if you wanted to get paint off a car, you put tomato sauce on it. I mean, not a good thing for you. Now, you know, all of this, and this lunacy that went on from Johns Hopkins 25 years ago where they said, when you cook a tomato, you have more phytonutrients. This is baloney at its biggest. When I was debating this woman, I said to her, you must have invented a new form of molecular science nobody's heard about. I said, I heard in the past when you cook something, you destroy molecules. You're actually saying you manifest something that wasn't there to begin with. Hallelujah. So I said, here's my naivety. I would think that you open up the cells of the tomato by cooking it, the phytochemicals spill out, and you can identify them. But I'm positive that you didn't manifest something that wasn't there to begin with. But a tomato happens to be a great food. If you don't have a sugar problem, don't eat it with greens and vegetables. And by the way, if you have heart, breast, prostate problems, and circulatory thing, I think it's a great food. It has to always be what, though? Ripe and organic. Because, boy, it's acid. It's highly acid.
I have a quick question.
Okay, I'll get to the paper.
Dyslexia and sugar consumption. I have had my children on raw food diets for some years and dealt with it, and I didn't see a huge difference. And just a question.
You can see a huge difference?
Not a huge difference, but I don't know what would have been otherwise.
So the raw diet you have them on, does it have all organic? Does it have a lot of fruit?
It has fruit.
It has fruit. And does it have a lot of processed things like dried foods? And
it could be the fruit.
Could be the fruit.
I'm thinking, you know.
Well, I know it's a fruit. Because we have people that come to us from the standard Western diet, and a lot of raw fooders, after they do it long enough and get sick and weak and get aging, then they come to us. And I've been told thousands of times over the decades, I couldn't believe the difference between eating a healthy raw food diet, just like there's a junk vegan diet, or there's a junk raw food diet. Most people that eat raw food diets eat superfoods. They don't eat food. They eat superfoods, which, by the way, is mostly nonsense. But get back there, give your kids greens, they're going to hate you now. Get the green juices out, the wheatgrass, etc.
Thank you for putting on this conference. It's really amazing. Really, really. I'm looking forward to next year. I want to do it in California. Will you answer a question that was left open earlier, and that is, are there and what are the benefits of soaking a nut, seed, or grain before we consume it raw?
Well, number one, I don't think anyone should ever consume a nut, seed, or a grain, or a bean without soaking it first. You know, nature is brilliant, much more intelligent than we will ever be. And over the years, over the hundreds and millions of years that plants have evolved, they intuitively understood plants, or nature, or God, if you will, that you needed to have pesticides, natural occurring pesticides on these seeds so that that last seed would never die, so that the bugs wouldn't eat it and the animals wouldn't eat it, and it's a noxious level, not enough to kill, but to prevent. That's still on there. Today we call them enzyme inhibitors. Now, by the way, some of these enzyme inhibitors now we understand are phytochemicals, which are pro-body, anti-disease, etc. But you want to soak it first. Now, there's the secondary reason. When you soak and sprout or germinate a seed or a nut or a grain and bean, you're going to get a minimum of 8 times more nutrition across the board. Some things literally go up 75 times and more. But at minimum of 8 times more. 8 times, like one of the wonderments of science is, for instance, when you analyze wheat, it has no vitamin C. We cannot discover vitamin C in it. You germinate the seed, and it's a pretty good source of vitamin C. Isn't that amazing? So we don't know how that happens. But you know, there's many things in science, as smart as many of you think scientists are, we don't know how hydrogen and oxygen put together creates a liquid called water. Nobody can really give you that answer. I've heard a lot of opinions, but nobody can give you that answer.
My question is regarding vitamin C because we've always been taught that vitamin C's in our fruit and everything. And I know vitamin C's in all our other green vegetables and stuff. But how much vitamin C should we be getting?
Well, you know, it's the people who like to sell you supplements are going to tell you have to have 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 milligrams. It's about the vitamin C. In my book, Supplements Exposed, I actually point out that almost 100% of vitamin C is a chemical called ascorbic acid that really doesn't ever digest in the body, actually weakens the immune system, and doesn't do you any good. At best, it's a placebo. See, that's one of the people that are a little angry over there. So with that said, you need to get a whole food supplement or eat whole foods. You know, although we create an A+ level of vitamin C, I don't really tell a lot of people to eat it because I'd rather have you eat an organic red pepper every day or organic yellow pepper. Incredibly rich source of vitamin C. Broccoli has a lot of vitamin C in it. Most people don't know this. If broccoli does, what about a broccoli sprout? I don't even know the numbers, but I know it's significantly more absorbable. So you don't have to eat fruit to get vitamin C. Amela berry is one of the things that it's extracted, vitamin C, whole food vitamin C is extracted from, but we leave behind the sugars in these things. Good question. And by the way, vitamin C, and God bless Linus Pauling, what a genius, brilliant man, created the field of orthomolecular medicine. He wasn't absolutely correct on vitamin C and colds. You know, what we do know is zinc is an amazing thing for that. But common cold's not so good with vitamin C.
Hi. There's a lot of drinks out on the market that have...
I'm sure you've tried them all.
No, I read a lot of labels before I put something in this mouth. But erythritol is grouped with stevia lots of times in sodas and in fruit drinks, et cetera, even in waters. And what is erythritol and how healthy is that?
Don't touch it. It's not healthy at all. It's actually a bridge factor to make it's not quite a synthetic, but it's like a synthetic that bridges together the stevia with other sugars. So it's not something that's healthy.
What is it made of?
It's
from?
actually supposed to be, it doesn't have to be and probably isn't, but it's supposed to be from a fruit itself. But it's not hardly ever that, because they can make it in a laboratory like vitamin C. It's a lot less expensive to make ascorbic acid than to go to a berry, extract that, you know, process it, etc.
So not healthy.
Avoid it. Avoid it. Again, the only thing I spoke about today that we are absolutely sure of, that globally there's enough evidence and science and research, and I've used it myself for decades for people, is stevia. There's nothing else. There's other things that are out there. Sadly, they use dextrose for bridges and different things.
What about the stevia that's clear, that's not the dark-colored stevia?
Well, let me put it out this way. This is when I'm going to tell you to eat a more processed food. Because if you just take the stevia leaf and grind it up, yes, it's very sweet, but it has an aftertaste, a bite to it. Most people don't like it. So what they do is certain companies, and it's your question you're asking, we chose at Hippocrates, after laboring over this for years, is to get the liquid forms. So they take away the leaf, they process out the leaf, it's just the essential part of the stevia, and liquids that's much more user-friendly, tastes more like sugars, and that's the one we suggest and honor. Now, which brands? There's many brands around the country. There's one, I'm traveling sometimes, my plane flies in at 1 o'clock, I've got to speak at 8 o'clock in the morning somewhere. I carry something with me called Sweet Leaf. It's one of the hundreds of companies
Wisdom Brands.
Yeah, and so what that has in it, it has lemon. They take the lemon essence of it and they put it in. I put 4 or 5 drops of that in a quart of water. Guess what? I have a juice without sugar.
So the clear one is okay to use as well?
Well, I don't know what you mean by clear one, but the liquid one is what we prefer.
The liquid clear one.
Yeah.
I use the brown concentrate personally.
Yeah.
But is it okay to use the clear one?
Well, see, I don't really know enough
the
about the
clear-colored one.
Yeah, clear is what we suggest because it's liquid. Now, which clear one you're using, I don't know. What the brown one you're using, I don't know. I don't know. So I'd have to look at them and tell you, yes, this is good or not good, but I can tell you the liquid forms are usually where we find the ones that people like.
Okay,
And
thank
they're
you.
user-friendly, yes.
My question is, you mentioned something that to eat instead of candy, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Oh, yes. Instead of candy, and it doesn't taste like candy. It's algae. And the type of algae that are generally best because they're less expensive for people, easier to for mobility, you stick it in a little bag in your pocket, is chlorella. Because in a very short time, chlorella. Make sure you don't get it from Japan or China. You get a good form of chlorella. And they're little. Get the little ones. And you just need, somebody your weight would generally need no more than 3, maybe 4 of these little ones. And it acts like a pacifier. So when we start crying out for sugar, you put it in 10, 15 minutes, it takes away the edge.
Hey, Brian, thanks. Will you talk about the difference, if there is a difference, one better or not, the kamut and the wheatberry for sprouting?
If you look at wheats, we have fancy name for wheats now in the 21st century. One is called kamut, and kamut is actually a high mountain wheat. It's a more primitive wheat. Now they tell me, the agricultural scientists over the years, that wheat at one point had up to 35%, 38% protein. A good organic wheat today, if you have 7 or 8%, is remarkable. Kamut, not in every case, is more likely to have higher proteins in it than the normal mainstream wheat, which has been much more hybrid. And so that would be why you'd prefer that. As far as growing wheatgrass out of wheat sprouts and getting the chlorophyll factor, they're about the same. Nutrition, I don't think it's dynamically or big time difference, but you're going to get a little more out of the kamut or spelt, another form of primitive wheat.
Thank you, Brian. Could you comment on iodine and how that might affect everything you're speaking about, actually?
I think iodine has a new life coming into it, that up until recently, we've thought of iodine as something that if you take too much of it, it's dangerous. And then when they test the public, practically all of us are lacking iodine. And then when we start to look at the burgeoning disorders, when our medical team at Hippocrates looks at how many people have a thyroid problem, it's appalling, shocking, and crazy. 50% of women now, I don't care what age you are, once you get beyond 15, I think, have some kind of a thyroid disorder. And with radioactivity, the lack of iodine and selenium in our soil, and the use of cell phones and laptop computers and router in your house, and at your office, 35 computers going on, and cell towers outside of your house, you're going to see more and more and more and more thyroid problems. And I am a big believer that lack of thyroid is probably behind that. Taking proper forms of thyroid, prescribed by a doctor who knows what she or he's doing, is my advice. We have seen this time and time and time and time and time again, be when the people come back and say to us, I'm seeing results, my doctor is telling me that my free T3, my free T4, my TSH is regulating. There's thyroid implicated in that in some way. But again, you don't just run out because I said thyroid's good, get thyroid off the shelf and start taking it. So there's different kinds of thyroid that we've been using that you can call up and our team can talk to you about that we know for sure. I'm not going to say they're all bad except what I'm using. I know what we're using works. I don't know how many out there are bad for you, but I know the majority are. There may be other things that work too, I'm just not familiar with them. Our physician is on the same page as I am, Dr. Tina. We had a conversation just last week about this, how thyroid is going to be one of the future nutrition elements that people need in preventing thyroid problems and radioactive poisoning. I mean, if you heard our kickoff lectures here last weekend, 10 days ago, if this didn't wake you up to how radiated all of us, that 40% of Europe is contaminated beyond belief at this point, that you're contaminated here. And what did my colleague Dr. Cousins tell you? That just a few days after the Japanese incident occurred, the number one highest radioactivity was not on the west coast of the United States, but about an hour from here in Melbourne, Florida. Did you hear what he said to you? Now, people didn't come in here and make these things up, by the way. You had thousands of hours of mind trust here over the last 10 days. And the one thing I know about these colleagues is that they're acutely interested in reading and science. So most of you, rightfully, you're not scientists, you're not interested in, and rightfully you shouldn't be, are not reading. But a lot of us are sort of nerds on this stuff. We just love to read this stuff. And when you read it, it's there. It doesn't take a lot to find these things. It's not all on the internet, and it's not easy to access sometimes. But overwhelming evidence is that we're getting more and more radioactive all of the time. Nobody seems to be stopping this except Germany. I congratulate Germany out there. Let's give them a hand. After the fiasco occurred in Japan, they said they're going to phase out their nuclear plants. But unfortunately, France has more per capita than any place, and they're right next to there. But at least it's a step in the right direction. My wife's country is Sweden, talked about this 30 years ago. I haven't seen them go away yet. And even the environmentalists sometimes, unfortunately, misstep and say, well, what are we going to do if we don't get rid of them? We're going to do a lot of things. It's going to force us to find sustainable sources of energy that aren't going to kill us in the process.
If I want to be on a vegan diet, I would like to know what kind of supplement do you need? Like, that's not in the food that we eat.
So
like
her question is, if you're on a vegan diet, what kind of supplements do you need? You should rephrase the question and say, how is I haven't starved to death since I'm not a vegan? That's what you should be asking. I mean, there is nothing that you lack in any diet that's a vegan, proper vegan diet, except the thing that's not enough anywhere called B12. B12, meat eaters have 7 to 8% higher incidence of B12 deficiency than vegans do. So the only supplement I know for sure that everyone needs, because your body doesn't produce it as it did at one point, and that's a whole elaborate discussion you may get on the internet, on Google or something, and see me speak about. But bottom line is, B12 you need. Beyond that, I don't know what you need.
What about omega-3?
You get more omega oils on the Hippocrates diet than any diet in the world. Where your fish get omega oils is called algae. Algae is part of the Hippocrates diet. This morning I got up, I take 5 types of algae, and I've been doing that for over 30 years.
And my last question is, how much is too much of sugar or sugary things?
I think 1 gram is too much today after what I've said. I think if you write the word sugar more than twice, you may die. It's pretty bad stuff.
So regarding lemons, because that is also a fruit, is there just a higher sugar content of some fruits over others?
Yeah. Lemon happens to be having more sugar than 50% of oranges. You just don't know it.
Really?
Yeah.
So
See?
you would recommend against lemon water in the morning?
No. Let's go slow. Again,
For someone who's pretty healthy?
if a person is really healthy, taking half a lemon and putting it in a liter or a quart of pure water is not going to kill you. If you said to me, I'm fighting cancer, I want to take 10 lemons today, not a good idea. Okay. Because once again, lemons have more sugar than 50% of the oranges. You just don't know it because it's tart. Now let me re-answer this question here. How do you pick up young guys in Speedos? We don't do that here. What a question to ask in this very serious conference we have here. So we did ask about the purest form of stevia is just the leaf where they grind it up. I'll give you the story of stevia. It wasn't until the mid-1800s, somewhere around 1860, that a group of explorers came to Ecuador, and they found with the indigenous people in Ecuador stevia. And they brought it back, and they researched it in Portugal and Spain, and they found, all the way back then, that it actually helped the body in some way. And that related into regulation of blood sugar. Now, I don't know enough about that to comment on it one way or another. But what I do know is if it takes away the need I have or you have or anyone out there has to eating sugar, God bless it. Because what we know from personal experience and clinical work at the Institute, when you put people on stevia, it doesn't do anything bad, but it does something good. Takes away the soda pop, takes away the mangoes, takes away the 30-pound watermelon, takes away the honey, takes away the agave syrup, and the need for it. So before we finish, let's have a moment of reflection. So let's all close our eyes out there in the world, unless you're driving a car. You shouldn't be listening to me if you're driving a car anyway. Let's close our eyes and relax. Give each and every one of these people the power and strength to perpetually seek transparent truth. When they receive that knowledge, to lovingly share it, and to stop the myth that we have to fight and destroy to win. Give them the ability to see the new ways that we can move to transform humanity and bring us back to normality. Thank you for being here. Thanks for spending all of the time with us. The Real Truth About Health is honored that you're with us. God bless.